Turkish Angel.
Was it the
Don't be racist.
Turkish Angel? It's still every Hajj season. I think about you, your book, your trip, and the Turkish Angel. If we have time, perhaps you can share that with. Let's start on a lighter note. Why not? Just share that very briefly with us, and then let's get to the heart of the matter with the whole situation with Trump, MBS, and the sellouts that you and I and the rest of the Ummah, or most of the Ummah, really see the situation selling out Palestine. And I think basically that is what it's about. But let's start on a lighter note and the Turkish Angel.
You see, that's why I don't like to do interviews with you, Julie. You throw me curve balls at the beginning, which I didn't expect to prepare for.
I
Um,
didn't expect to ask the question.
so the story is about when we were going from what was it after Arafah, um, or from Mina to Makkah. I can't remember where it was, and we were exhausted. And couldn't find any transport because it was extremely busy, and we tried to get transport, and I went to look for a taxi, and my mother and my wife at the time, when I returned, not having found a taxi, were laughing hilariously, even though when I left they were extremely exhausted and kind of depressed. And the reason was they described to me the scene of a bus that was leaving towards Mecca, and this Turkish man who ran after the bus grabbed onto the ladder at the back of the bus and climbed halfway up the ladder, at which time his ihram fell off, kind of got trapped between his body and the bus. And from where they were standing, they could see the naked back of this of this guy. um, and the joke about it was that they were so exhausted that Allah sent a Turkish angel to revive them, which it did.
What a lovely story. And I keep thinking about it every Hajj season because I know we had an in depth interview with you regarding your Hajj and the book you'd written. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, for those beautiful memories. Let's get to the serious issues of the day. And that, of course, is the state of politics in the world, and particularly the Middle East, and the sad state of affairs as you and I speak. There's going to be all of these festivities and these banquets going on in the Middle East to host Trump and his entourage, knowing that just across the border, literally in their backyard, I suppose is the term I should use. There are hundreds of thousands of people who are dying of starvation, malnutrition, and it is just I can't even look at those pictures any longer, Naim. So welcome, and you'd like to talk to us about all of that.
2 million people in Gaza who are being starved to death at the moment. Yeah, I think, I agree with you and what you said in your introduction. Certainly the Muslim world, let's say the official, the governing parts of the Muslim world in general, not everyone, but in general, have abandoned the Palestinian people. And not just the Palestinian people in general, but specifically Palestinians in Gaza, those more than 2 million who have been under siege for 17 or so, 18 years now, 18 years, yes, and who for the past 18 months have been bombarded in what is clearly a genocide, as South Africa's case at the ICJ shows, and more recently deliberately being starved to death. Would being starved to death being the stated intention, really, of what is taking place, while they are also being bombed. I mean, aid trucks that are gathered on all the borders are not being allowed in, etc. And in the midst of this, the governments of the Muslim world have largely been either silent, or the best response for most of them has been, some kind of criticism, a summit where they issue a statement, without anything more concrete taking place. So that's the kind of background to what's happening over the past couple of days. Trump's visit, I think, is very interesting, and while we have that as a backdrop, an important backdrop, I think we should also look at the specifics of the visit itself. Yesterday, he gave this big speech in Saudi Arabia, and well, let me say first that his trip, which is his first trip as president in this term, out of the country, and presidents like to make a big thing about where their first trip is going to be, or will be, or is. It's his first trip, and that trip is to 3 countries in the region: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. The other important thing about where he's visiting is also about where he's not visiting. He's not going to Israel, which is a very odd thing for an American president. He'll be visiting only these 3 countries, and then returning. And yesterday was this big speech that he gave at a kind of summit in Saudi Arabia. It was an interesting speech in which he kind of focused on how great these Gulf countries are. Of course, for Trump, great means, mostly from a financial, economic perspective.
Dollars and petrodollars.
Yes. So he focused on how successful these countries are, but he used every opportunity to take swipes at his predecessor presidents, who he referred to as interventionists, and spoke about how their interventionism has been a big failure, and then pointed to these 3 countries as countries that survived partly because they didn't have American intervention in them. I mean, of course, not entirely true, because intervention doesn't necessarily mean military. But that was a point he was making, which was suggesting then also that the U.S. involvement in countries such as Iraq, in the area, with Iran, etc., have been failures and have been the wrong strategy, and that things need to be done differently and will be done differently in his presidency. I think this is an interesting kind of approach. Certainly, from an analyst perspective, it's interesting, dumping on the role of his own country and the former presidents, and saying that things will be different in moving forward. Then, towards the end of his speech, he announced that all sanctions against Syria will be lifted. These sanctions, by the way, are not just sanctions that have been in place since 2011, when the uprisings began in Syria, but sanctions that go back to 1979 on Syria. He's announced that all these sanctions will be lifted, and then the kind of thing that he didn't speak about, which is Iran. We know that right now there are negotiations taking place between the US and Iran. They had 4 meetings thus far, the 4th one 2 days ago, looking at what a new nuclear deal with Iran might look like. And on this, I might also point out that he has very much disappointed the Israelis on that. Number one, they didn't want to have any talks. They wanted American assistance, and they expected American assistance with Trump in the White House to bomb and virtually destroy Iran. He flipped it and decided there's not going to be any bombing, and that there will be negotiations on the nuclear issue. The fact, of course, that what you're looking at as a deal will be basically the deal that was already there that he nullified is beside the point. Secondly, on this, that the Israelis have been saying very triumphantly saying that any deal with Iran will mean that Iran will not be able to enrich any new uranium, that all its enriched uranium it'll have to get from outside the country, etc. That it'll have to entirely give up its nuclear program, even its civilian nuclear program. That any deal will include restrictions on its missile capacity. It'll have to give up its ballistic missiles, etc., etc. Trump has not said any of that. I mean, he's saying that there'll be a deal if they agree not to have nuclear weapons, which of course the Iranians are quite happy to do. So there's been 4 of those meetings that the Israelis have not been happy about.
Naim, we need to do
yeah.
our first ad break. 1 or 2 things that I would like you to touch on when we get back is the sanctions being lifted on Syria. What does that mean for Syria and the new leadership there? Does that mean that there's going to be strengthening of ties between Syria and Israel? Also, we understand that Qatar has gifted a jet to Trump. What's that all about? Is that some sort of closed door deals that have been cut and now they're talking about gifting him a plane? But the main reason for him visiting Saudi Arabia is, of course, to sell armaments to the Saudis to the value of, I think, 100 billion or some such crazy figure. And, of course, to cut an oil deal, ongoing oil deal with Saudi. Let's look at all of those issues when we come back, but not forgetting the impact once again on the Palestinian situation and the fact that Trump hasn't made any reference or is not visiting Israel. How is that all then going to work, hopefully, in the favor of the Palestinian people? I'm talking with Naim Jeenah. He's the senior researcher at MISTRA, but we're going for an ad break. When we get back, Naim will be responding to all of those questions.
The most important meal of the day, yet many children go to school hungry because of poverty. Penny Appeal South Africa's Breakfast Club aims to get a warm, hearty meal to underprivileged children so they can spend their day prospering in their schoolwork. Help feed a needy learner for only 5 Rand a day or 150 Rand a month. Or visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573 to find out how you can donate. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Operation Kurbani Maulana Timur will once again be taking a trip abroad for Kurbani. Many people in the villages live well below the poverty line and only eat meat on the days of Eid al-Adha. Support this cause at 2,100 Rand for 7 shares or 300 Rand per share. Contact Maulana Timur, Maulana Sajjad, Maulana Hamad or Maulana Abbad on 011 852 6324 or 072 299 9268 or 082 368 6866 or 072 697 0131 or 073 576 9786. All slaughtering will be supervised by a team of foreign and local ulama. Visit www.operationkurbani.org.za.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Abu Huraira narrated that he heard the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, "In black seed there is a healing for every disease except death. Experience the health benefits of this ancient blessed seed by using the Tib Black Seed range. Black seed assists the body to boost immunity, regulate blood sugar levels, reduce inflammation, and act as a potent antioxidant. Experience a holistic approach to health by introducing the Tib Black Seed range into your routine. Available in capsules, pure cold-pressed oil, and a vapor rub. Trust Tib Health Sciences for quality black seed products. For more information, visit blackseed.co.za. Available at leading pharmacies.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. We're talking with Naim Jeenah. He is the senior researcher at MISTRA, and we are talking about Trump's visit to the Middle East. Back to you, Naim, and would you like to respond to the points I raised just before the break?
Well, let's start with the issue about Syria, Julie. So he's announced this lifting of sanctions. There doesn't seem to be any quid pro quo on that. So he's not saying that we're lifting sanctions as long as Syria, develops good relations with Israel. There's none of that. It was a simple kind of we're lifting all sanctions and allow this great country to be great again, and he used the word great a lot, etc. I also think that we must be very careful about this kind of discourse of attacking the new Syrian government and claiming that it's a creation of the United States or a creation of Israel and all of that. It really is none of those. It's in a very difficult position, partly because taking over a state with all of the kind of sanctions that it had, with the security concerns of remnants of the former army still waiting to attack it, etc. And Israel next door that has been attacking it from the day that Damascus fell at the end of 2024. The new Syrian government doesn't have the kind of army that a fully fledged state does. It's still building that army. Much of the weaponry of the old Syrian state was destroyed by Israel in those first few days. So it is not extremely strong in that kind of way. Its focus now is on reconstruction and rebuilding the country. And these sanctions, after the announcement by Trump yesterday, there were demonstrations in Damascus, celebratory demonstrations.
We saw that, yeah.
Because people expect that this will make their lives easier, and so I think the kind of knee-jerk reaction of many people that this means the announcement yesterday means or shows or proves that Ahmad al-Sharra is in the American pocket, I think is very silly.
There's also the issue of, obviously we know that in Syria there's so very many factions, religious groups, different types of religious groups. There's the Druze community as well. There's the Christians. So all of that, and there's a lot of, I guess, sectarianism within Syria. So they have a lot to deal with because everybody will align themselves with their own identities. So that, I think, is going to be a huge challenge as well for the government, and it adds to their problems. Naim, why do you suppose, Trump was so supportive just at the beginning of his tenure, very supportive of Israel. Netanyahu visited him and he was speaking in very flowery terms about Israel and the support they were going to give him. He spoke about flattening Gaza and building a luxury resort, etc., etc., etc. He is a very impulsive man, but be that as it may, why do you suppose there seems to be a cooling off? And I should imagine, hopefully, in the interests of Palestine, I hope so. But there seems to have been a cooling off between his relationship with Netanyahu.
So there's a couple of things. I mean, two big reasons around this. One is that Trump relies a lot on personal relations, and his personal relationship with Netanyahu has turned a bit sour, and part of the reason for that is that Netanyahu has been taking Trump for granted. He expected, the Israelis over the past 18 months or so of genocide in Gaza under the Biden administration had got full support of weaponry, diplomatic and other support, unquestioning support. I mean, the reports are coming out now of kind of behind the scenes discussions where the Israelis were basically told, you can do whatever you like and we'll follow. By the Biden administration. He expected that would be even better under Trump, and therefore took Trump for granted. He expected that he'd get a green light for the annexation of the West Bank. He expected that Iran would be destroyed by Israel and the US working together, that the Ansar Allah in Yemen would be destroyed, that he would get American support for his adventure in Lebanon, etc. And that visit that he made to the White House was specifically around launching a war against Iran. And then he was disappointed in that. So firstly, he took Trump for granted, and Trump doesn't like that, of course, and so that's part of the reason. But the other part of the reason is that there's a bit of a battle taking place within the Trump administration and those around him now, between two groups. One is the kind of more typical neoconservative lot, Republican type lot from the past. And the other is this group of what are being called American Firsters. And in terms of the American First discourse, and many of them seem to be on the ascendancy in the administration, Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, who was redeployed now and is going to be the UN, the ambassador to the UN rather than National Security Advisor, was one of those neocons. He worked with Netanyahu. He supported the idea that the US should bomb Iran, etc. He's been moved out. The Minister of Defense, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State are American firsters, and they believe that America comes first, and every other country should serve America's purposes. Israel doesn't. From that perspective, and as long as Israel doesn't, and Israel costs them more than the benefit it brings, there's no use supporting them completely and unquestioningly. Hence the direct negotiations. I mean, no American president before this ever tried this. Direct negotiations with what they regard as a terrorist organization, with Hamas, twice. First with Bulla, and this time round, which was more quiet, and this got the release of that captive. Negotiations with Ansar Allah and a ceasefire with Ansar Allah in Yemen, none of which the Israelis liked. And from the Trump administration's perspective, these things are necessary because they are in American interests. They might not be in the Israeli interest, but that's not what is important. So I think this is a big factor. How it continues to play out and how that battle within the administration plays out remains to be seen. Israel is not bereft of political cards in Washington D.C. And is not bereft of lobbyists in its support. But at the moment, that's an interesting place where it is. Also, as I said earlier on, the negotiations with Iran. Iran, by the way, yesterday announced. Not yesterday, on Sunday. It was revealed yesterday. On Sunday, during the talks, they proposed that the nuclear enrichment program, not nuclear weapons, of course, but nuclear enrichment for civilian use, they proposed that this could be a joint program between Iran and some of the Arab states, which of course would include Saudi Arabia, which is a big kind of announcement. Can you imagine Saudi Arabia and Iran working together on a nuclear program? So what we are seeing is changing dynamics in the region between different parties in the region. And I think that Trump's seeming attitude of taking a hands-off approach and saying, we deal with countries as they are good for us. And so his main thing with Saudi Arabia is not, will you normalize with Israel, but how much of money will you invest in the US? That might actually turn out to be good for the region, being left alone by the Americans to find their own way.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap up, but one or two very important questions. Naim, I do know that Trump is expecting $100 trillion. Saudi Arabia offered 600 trillion, but he's wanting 100 trillion. So it's all about deals and what America can get out of the Middle East. And even though this might work slightly in the interests of the region, very loosely, a lot of us kind of question the uninvolvement of the other Arab states regarding the plight of the Palestinian people. We know that a lot of them are armed to the hilt. They could do something, but it's a much bigger question and a much bigger picture than just that, because it could, my understanding is, should any one of those countries try and offer assistance to Palestine, it could flare up in a regional war, perhaps. However, could they not then negotiate? Surely they have the power to negotiate for aid to get into Palestine, and for the other atrocities that is being perpetrated on the Palestinian people should and must stop with immediate effect.
So first on that trade thing. So Trump wanted a deal from Saudi Arabia worth $1 trillion. What he's got is an assurance of various kinds of investments that add up to $600 billion.
Oh, is it billion, not trillion? Pardon, it's billion. Okay.
Of which 142 billion is purchases and investments in the weapons industry. But in total, it's 600 billion. Yeah, I mean, your question is very valid, and not valid only now. It has been valid for 8 decades, certainly much more valid in the past 18 months. And that is where are these Arab and in general Muslim governments in protecting the Palestinian people? For most of these governments, Palestine is no. I mean, for the people it might be, but for the governments, Palestine is no longer an issue that they're really concerned about. For many of them, Palestine is a kind of thorn in their side in terms of their intention to develop better relations with Europe, with the US, etc. We're talking about now $142 billion deal in terms of weapons. Saudi Arabia is, flush with American weaponry. You could conceivably see a war taking place where all of these neighboring countries, all of the Arab countries, together with other Muslim countries, such as Iran and others, say that they want that they will exercise the responsibility, not right, but the duty imposed on all states by the Genocide Convention, which imposes on all states the duty to prevent a genocide from taking place. I mean, this is what Ansarullah has done. They are preventing ships from going to Israel. They bombed the Ben Gurion airport, and the position is that this is in line with their duty according to the Genocide Convention. Other states could do that as well, but I doubt that they're going to do it. In terms of the aid issue, yes. They we can say that they could, but practically what does that mean? Practically that means that they will confront the Israeli army on whichever border. I mean, the only border of Gaza with the Israelis is Egypt.
Okay.
And of course there's the sea. So we could say that they're really cowardly because they could take a flotilla of ships flying all the Arab flags and try and go to Gaza with aid. But no, they're not going to do that.
Because they're afraid of the repercussions from Israel. Let's leave it there. Naim, I could sit and talk with you all day long, but unfortunately my next guest is standing by. Always a pleasure engaging with you. Go well. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
It is exactly 8:39, and I do apologize to our guest that is waiting to chat with us. We'll hook up with you in a minute or two. Let's go for an ad break. And the guest I'm referring to, of course, is Dr. Halim from Wits University.